Good morning. It is 9 a.m. on August 15th. We'll call the Wright County Board of Commissioners to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on today's agenda is the minutes from the county board meeting on August 1st and the county board workshop minutes from August 8th. They can be approved combined or separated. I will entertain any corrections or additions. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of either both collectively or individually.
So moved.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Catchmark for the approval of the minutes from August 1st and August 8th collectively.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I was bringing up an item.
Oh, item, okay.
Yes.
So we have a motion for both. At this point, do you want to remove your motion until we has this discussion?
That's fine.
Okay. Commissioner Catchmark?
Well, it was for discussion on the item with the U.S. Bank Stadium recommendation with some new information that we got on that item since this last meeting.
And this would be regarding the response back from that Aaron Leapins, I don't know if I said that correct, regarding the asking that, or stating, I wouldn't even say asking, that they were a statement that they would continue the contract under the current rate of 80, not off the top of my head, I don't know the exact amount, through 2023, in enacting or will consider entering into a contract at a later date for 2024, depending on their needs, at the new rate of 105.
Mr. Chair, that doesn't go into the minutes from the last meeting, though.
It pertains to the minutes because the recommendation was for the execution of that rate. Was that what the point was? That the way the minutes read was that they would be, those rates would be executed. So I guess 2 points here. One would be you're wanting to have the discussion about the rate and when it would take effect, but you're stating that through the minutes. So I guess at this point, it doesn't really, agenda item, we'll make it a item later on in the agenda to discuss that. I would look at putting that on the agenda. Let's see here. We're gonna go under items for consideration, and we are going to put that, we're gonna deal with that as the first items as consideration. So I'm gonna put one as the U.S. Bank contract, and then put 1, 2, 3. So actually, or we can, yeah, we'll do that. All right. So with that being done, or unless you would like to make it a timed agenda item, we can do that with the Chief Treichler's here. So maybe let's move it to that from items for consideration. My apologies. We'll move it under the item E2.
Mr. Chair, are we approving the minutes at this time? We will approve the agenda with
Yes.
those changes after
make
this
that-
is done.
Yes. So is there any actual corrections to the language of the minutes, or is
No.
then
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
all right. We have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Second, we have the minutes from the Aggregate Tax Committee on 7/26 and the Personnel Committee on 8/1 and the Committee of the Whole on 8/8. We can approve them collectively or individually. Is there any modifications to the language of the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Catchmark.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Commissioner Dietrich. We will now discuss the item of it under the approval of the agenda. So the discussion would be to add an agenda item to discuss the U.S. Bank contract based on the information from the Mr. Aaron Leapins.
And Mr. Chair, I got another item to add.
Okay?
That'd be the contract for expedition services at the appropriate place for discussion.
So we'll put all those under the item E under item F. So we'll have an F2 and an F3. So under the Oracle, then we'll have the US Bank Stadium and then the expedition services. Unless you guys want to do this in a different order, unless you want to do those before the Oracle contract. You're fine, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those couple changes.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved unanimously. Next would be today's consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove any items off today's consent agenda for further discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Catchmark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. First timed agenda item is the 902 Assistant Administrator Mark Mattice, the approval recommendations from the Wright County Aggregate Tax Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you're aware, we started an aggregate tax committee about a year ago, developed all our application materials and rules that go along with that and process and procedures. We have representatives from 2 townships as well as the city appointed by the Wright County Board, along with 2 commissioners, Commissioner Ketchmark and Commissioner Dietrich on that board. We announced applications and have reviewed those. The committee is making recommendations for the board to consider for the aggregate tax fund. We had 7 applications, and we are allowed to fund up to $120,000. Those applications included, in your packet, you'll see the scoring criteria and all that good stuff that we use for that. We are recommending funding project for the Wright County Parks and Recreation Department at $30,000 for the restoration of Bill Anderson abandoned pit. City of Monticello for a turf conversion to native prairie at $30,000. Independent School District 877, North Winds Prairie Restoration Project, it's a $30,000 recommendation. City of Clearwater on some stormwater ponds for $10,000, and Maple Lake Improvement District water level control structure for $20,000. 2 other applications that we reviewed, we are not recommending any funding towards. With your approval, we'd go ahead and start to write grant agreements with each of those partners with the 24-month project timeframe. During the review process, there was a number of those that we talked about that we do have to make some changes next year in our application process to ensure that some of these turf conversions are not like one and done, that they maintain them for 10 to 15 years and that they're willing to sign that agreement. Everybody that had those projects in there agreed to those types of terms. So we'll write that into the grant agreement so that we have something to fall back on. And then as far as some of the recommended funding that, or requested funding that were narrowed down, they all agreed on those funding terms as well, that they could complete the project scopes as presented to us at the Aggregate Tax Committee.
So any comments from the members involved in the process? Or?
Mr. Chair, could you explain just a little bit how we're using aggregate tax money for environmental?
Okay.
Just, that's in the statute. Can you just explain that a little bit?
I can do my
Please.
best and throw me under the bus here. And, so the aggregate tax fund is a tax that was imposed back in early 2000s. Out of that fund, 5% goes to administration. So it goes to finance for administration. That gives you a new 100%. So 42.5% of that goes to Wright County Highway Department, Road and Bridge. And then 42% goes to the townships where those pits and those taxes are collected in. It leaves you a 15% that goes to the restoration of abandoned pits or other conservation and environmental needs. And that's how we come up with those environmental and conservation projects, which we listed out in the program materials that were adopted earlier by the board and reviewed on the scoring criteria that we developed.
Thank you.
So for those of you that are not aware, this is the first time that we're actually accessing those reclamation funds. So historically in the county, we've been building them up and haven't been utilizing them. It's come to the conclusion now that the fund is large enough that we should have some way of accessing that. That's hence where we made some modifications and created this granting program. So very well done.
Mr. Chair, and thank you to Mark and to Commissioner Diedrich for jumping on when, I mean, you weren't here when this all started, but it's almost historic that all this money's been gathered for so many years and nothing's been done with it. And we followed the rules and found appropriate places to spend it. So that's what we're here to discuss. We went over all the projects and community involvement. That was helpful. If there isn't any questions, then we need to make a motion on that plan.
That would be, yep. you
Okay,
making that
I'll make
motion?
a motion, yes.
All right, motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Dietrich for the approval of the recommendations from the Wright County Aggregate Tax Committee and authorizing staff to execute those contracts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to.
First and second. She
Oh, sorry,
seconded.
we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. They are approved unanimously. Now we have the 907. We're keeping pretty close on track. Finance Director Lindsay Meyer to review the service agreement between Wright County Finance Taxpayer Services and the Independent School District 877 for absentee balloting. And it looks like Tyler's taking this one.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're just here today to kind of give you all awareness of an agreement we'll be entering into with School District 877. We'll be providing absentee balloting services for that school district for their upcoming levy election, November 7th. So we've done this in the past. Typically, we've worked with school districts. They've contracted out to us to provide services. We did want to highlight that in the past, we've charged a rate of $6.50 per ballot that we've processed for those school districts. With inflation, increased postage costs, we've gone ahead. We've upped that rate to $7.25. We have worked with the school districts. They are in agreement. They think this is a fair rate to work with, and so they are going to agree to this agreement. So we just want to make you all aware of it. See if there's any concerns or questions about it. This is an optional service. We are not required to provide this service to the school districts. It's just something that we think as an office is a great service to provide to the school districts and to your constituents. So we're just hoping to get your blessing on this and see if there's any concerns.
In Tyler, school districts have the ability, if they so choose to, they could collect it on their own. This is just more the fact that we have the expertise and we have the training here in-house, and they choose to do that versus trying to create the system internally.
Yeah, exactly. We have the expertise. We do this really well. We do it every year. We could say, no, school districts, you got to do this. We have that authority, but I think we've just kind of reviewed kind of the time it would take to do this process. We think it would be a great, opportunity for our staff to get more experience working with the equipment, more experience kind of working with the new legislation. So we think this would be a great opportunity.
And these are all ones that are pertains to special elections, because just wanted the public to understand that we don't charge the school districts on general elections. These are ones when they choose to have either a school board or a bond or election that would be outside of the normal election process.
Exactly. So anytime, they want to have their own election, whether it's a school district or a city, they're typically responsible for those costs. But if they want to contract out for other administrative services, they're welcome to contact us.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question on the fee. Was that part of the fee schedule review that we kind of have now a schedule of doing?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the previous fee with the agreement that we did in 2021, if that was included. For the record, again, that was $6.50 per ballot. And so we're just increasing that to $7.25 per ballot. We worked with our finance team to kind of break down, what does the increase in postage look like? What does it cost for one of our staff members to administer this process? And so we got within that range, about $7.25. So we think that's a fair amount to be recouping for this service.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve this agreement.
So moved.
All right, motion by Commissioner Shane, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tyler. All right, 9:12 here, we have Virgil Hawkins. We have the approve the Transportation Committee, the whole meeting minutes and recommendations from July 25th.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Today there are two highway items. The first one is to request approval of Transportation Committee minutes of the whole. And the draft minutes are in your packet for review and comment. I'm going to summarize the topics from the meeting and mention the action items recommended to the board. The first item was the intersection of Highway 55 and 6 that was discussed by MnDOT engineers Zach Whitley and James Hallgren that were at the meeting. This was an informational item, so there was no action taken. The next topic was a review of the 5-year construction plan, an updated plan. We had some changes that staff recommended due to changes in funding, grant monies, timelines with partner agencies, and balancing the workload. The action by the committee was to approve the updated 5-year construction plan. The next item was talking about a technical assistance grant opportunity that MnDOT's going to have coming out. And the consensus of the committee was to approve the highway department to apply for this grant that's going to be coming out soon. And we're still waiting for it to come. We've been hoping it would have been here by now so we could apply for it. The next item was to discuss wheelage tax possibility for Wright County. And that was a clear consensus to not pursue the wheelage tax for Wright County. The next item was a review of our local option sales tax program and consider updating the loss list to include our new Montrose Waverly outlying truck station building. And the action by the committee was to add the Montrose Waverly outlying truck station building to the loss list. And that'll mean in the future, at a future board meeting, there'll have to be a public hearing and a resolution to do that. The next topic was a status update on County Road 123 in Corinna Township. This was an informational item and no action was taken. The next item was a discussion on local traffic impacts due to traffic not following a posted detour route for a county construction project. The consensus of the committee was to follow the current practice of not reimbursing local agencies for potential impacts to their roadways. The final item on the agenda was a discussion of the process for spot safety improvements on future lost funded pavement preservation projects. The consensus of the committee was to continue with the current practice of having county engineering staff determine the scope of work for spot safety improvements. And on future projects, staff will reach out to the public to convey what's being done so that there's a clear understanding of what's going to be done with these spot safety improvements. So that's kind of a quick recap. If there's any questions or revisions needed to the minutes in your packet, let me know and we can get those changed.
All right. Board
I'll
member.
make a motion to approve those.
Thank you, Commissioner Dietrich. We have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
Second.
second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just a comment on another topic, but I got a comment that the folks were happy with the weed control that was happening recently from your department.
Thank you.
They noticed less thistles or they were going to sleep or something, so thank you for that.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The second item for highway today is to approve a resolution requesting a variance from standard for state aid operations for the Franklin Township Bridge project. And this is a project where Wright County, we're the fiscal agent for the township so they can receive town bridge money to replace this town road bridge. This request has come from the township's engineer, who if it's passed, then he would attend a MnDOT variance committee meeting in Arden Hills to get MnDOT's approval for the variance. And the existing bridge approach doesn't meet standard, and there's been no safety issues there. There's adequate signing. And to meet standards, it would require a significant amount of right-of-way cost and wetland impacts, and the township would rather not do that.
Mr. Chair, and we had a meeting or two about this, and it seems like a good deal for the township. They're paying a minimal cost for, I think, the approaches on both sides or something, $10,000, and the rest was going to be covered by the grant, right?
Correct.
Right. So if there's no further questions, I think it's a good move, and I'd make a motion to approve that resolution.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
Second.
second by Commissioner Dietrich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Resolution, Commissioner Catchmark?
Aye.
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 The resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, 10 minutes here. Let's go down to items for consideration. We can maybe get through the recommendations from approve the recommendations from the August 1st Personnel Committee. So we have 3 recommendations from the August 1st Personnel Committee. The first recommendation would be the co-responder early start date. Commissioner Catchmark and I did some discussion and vetting on this. The recommendation was to bring the request of the co-responder position to begin upon completion of the pilot program to the August 15th board meeting. So I think there was some discussion as to whether the Sheriff's Department was ready to continue on so that they are moving forth collectively, both between the Sheriff's Department and Health and Human Services, and I believe that is the case.
And
I'm
Mr.
getting a
Chair.
nod, yes.
And we'd asked about time tracking, and they seem to have that figured out, because it's, how are you going to balance if the time is not spent on that initiative with that staff? We asked that question, that was answered, and then when or if the grant money runs out, both departments respectively are going to come back to the board and say, the grant ran out, now what should we do with this staff?
I think that's a good summary.
Yep, thank you.
So the next one would be the reclass of the public health nurse to a emergency preparedness coordinator. This would be a cost neutral. It's just the change in job description, mostly just because the need has changed in the department, and this is the new position as a emergency preparedness better fits their current needs. The second item would be the OT1 for the best for unwinding. This was the support staff for the eligibility specialists and being able to help them process the high volume of requests that they have at this time. There is some funding pieces to it that would also be able to utilize from some grants. So the recommendation was to move forward with the approval for that. The last item was the recorder's office organizational structure, and that was a change in some classifications and changes to the organizational chart. After discussion, this, and maybe I'll encapsulated this better utilizes the staff within the department and creates better flow and longevity possibilities for the staff within the department, as well as has a lot of benefit to potential cross-training as well. So the recommendation was to bring this request to the August 15th for approval. Is that a fair summary, Commissioner Catchmark?
It is, and if the rest of the board members looked at the org chart and want to discuss how many are supervising, how many, we can talk about that, because that sometimes is an item for debate or discussion. So just pointing that out, that it's there and it's not automatic, all the time, but we did consider that.
And the cost on it was minimal impact from a budgetary perspective. So with that, I will entertain a motion for the approval of the Personnel Committee recommendations from August 1st.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
Second.
second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. I think we can do really quick the workshop recommendation from August 8th. There was one pretty short, mostly informational. We had the scheduled meetings as necessary, the MCIT presentation, the fee schedule update, which was the recommendation to review and revise the fee schedule for the October workshop, and then the update on the commissioner's project list, which was to adopt a new mission and vision statement and add development of a city administrators meeting to the commissioner's project list. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the recommendations from the August 8th workshop.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. They're just beating you by seconds.
I know.
All right, I still have 5 more minutes before our public hearing. Let's do the August 8th recommendation from the Committee of the Whole for the Wright County Economic Development Partnership. Great discussion there on this one. This one will be kind of still moving forward, but the recommendation was to set a Committee of the Whole for 9 a.m. on Tuesday, August 22nd to discuss the 2024 funding allocation levels from the county to the Wright County Economic Development Partnership and the Wright County Historical Society. So mostly just continuing it on, but I will entertain a motion to approve those recommendations.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, the recommendations from the August 8th Committee of the Whole are approved unanimously. All right, I think we're getting close enough here. We will enter into the 9:30 timed agenda item. The 9:30 timed agenda item is a public hearing on ordinance 23-3, regulating adult cannabis use in public spaces to mitigate threats to public health. This is a public health ordinance. At this time, I will call Sarah. And I think Mr. Lutz is going to join us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Oh, and Rachel, or not Sarah, yep, Sarah's there too, and Rachel, yep. Thank you. We had 3 people.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we've all heard a lot about the historic cannabis legislation that was passed, and most of it went into effect August 1st of this year. There's some holes in the legislation, and in multiple instances, the legislation makes certain behaviors unlawful, but does not prescribe a penalty for the unlawful behavior. And one of those instances is use of cannabis in public. So the statute makes clear that it's unlawful behavior to use cannabis in public, but it does not prescribe a criminal penalty for that behavior. Instead, there's a reference in the statute authorizing local units of government to pass an ordinance making it a petty misdemeanor to use in public. We've all been to metropolitan communities where the odor of marijuana, obviously a very strong odor, is very prevalent, and that's something that we wanted to avoid, or I personally wanted to avoid in Wright County for a quality of life for our citizens, that people are not subject to that very strong odor of marijuana by people using in public. So the invitation was there in the statute to pass a ordinance to make unlawful use in public. I know that, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, we've been at meetings collectively where we've spoke with mayors from Wright County, also township officers from all the townships in Wright County. Very recently, I spoke at a huge event that I know the commissioners attended, our All County Safe Schools event, where there was concern by our school administrative staff, superintendents, and principals concerned about this issue. So I thought it was important to be responsive on this subject, and with the help of Rachel Pence, one of the attorneys in my office, and also Greg Kreiser, my civil division chief, we put together a pretty thorough ordinance authorized under our statutory public health powers to have or public health authority to have a countywide ordinance that makes it unlawful, a petty misdemeanor to use in public. I kind of got thrust into a position with our County Attorneys Association where I'm chair of a couple cannabis committees. And one thing that we do really well, and I don't think we're unique to that, as I'm sure the Sheriff's Association and Public Health has similar sharing. A lot of counties have shared their ordinances, and we've done the same. So this is kind of a collective effort across the state, but I'm happy with the product. I think Ms. Pence did a great job on this ordinance, and I'm recommending that we pass this ordinance that does make it a petty misdemeanor to use in public. And that said, I'll turn it over to Sarah Grocius for the public health comments, and certainly available to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. As we have used the statutory guidance of 145A, is that for me that it turned off? Okay. I was just asked to provide public health justification. So I have a very short presentation to go over. I'll just remind everyone that marijuana is still federally illegal and a class 1 drug, which means that there isn't as much research as we would have on, for instance, tobacco or alcohol, which essentially and the legislature's been very clear that their legalization has been kind of threading the needle between public intoxication with alcohol and smoke-free air law with tobacco. So those are both things that we had conversations about. Rachel and I, as county attorney's office was developing this ordinance. All right. So we have 4 main areas we'd just like to highlight as threats to the public when we talk about public use. Certainly secondhand smoke exposure to both adults and youth in our communities. The normalization of the behavior of using marijuana in public. That's the same concern that we have with smoking and alcohol use. That's why you see now we do things differently. We have warnings on shows about if they're using alcohol or tobacco because it normalizes behavior, particularly for youth. That's a huge concern that we have heard. I know Attorney Lutz just mentioned safe schools, and I know all of you have attended safe school meetings and heard a lot about this normalization of marijuana use. We're going to have a lot of work on our hands for that. The concern about public impairment. And then, of course, with the advent of edibles and seltzers, the unintentional ingestion, particularly by children. However, I do know of adults who have also encountered that situation. So when we talk about secondhand exposure, secondhand marijuana smoke contains many of the same toxic and cancer-causing chemicals found in tobacco smoke and contains some of those chemicals in even higher amounts. There's fine particulate matter that can breathe in deeply. It can impact vascular function. And we do anticipate additional research by Minnesota Department of Health. Some of that funding from the legalization process will be funding additional health impacts. So we'll know more, but based on what we know about marijuana smoke, we anticipate that there will be similar impacts that we see with tobacco smoke. Certainly that normalized behavior, we talk about those, particularly those impacts to youth, the increased availability and access, the oversaturation of products at stores and advertisements, rapidly rising adult use, decreased perceptions of harm by both adults and youth, and particularly when we talk about youth use, we worry about their developing brains and the impact of the substances on their developing brain. And then inaccurate perceptions about the addictive properties. I will just let folks know marijuana is an addictive substance. So we talk about public impairment. So again, it does impair folks' motor skills, slowing reaction time, their ability to make decisions, their coordination, distorting perception, good behavior, general behaviors, making good decisions, and of course, the concern about public use is then also particularly people then, how do they get home when they're doing their public use and the risk for other risky behaviors around automobile use and things like that. And then finally, unintentional ingestion by children. Since it's been legalized in some states, accidental marijuana poisonings in children have increased, requiring visits to emergency room and hospitalization. And that's really that increased availability. There are supposed to be packaging and safeguards that hasn't been enforced in the past year with the low-dose THC products that have been introduced because of, and that is going to take time to get corrected. And then also impaired adults or just people have low-risk perceptions, leaving products out, not storing them safely, those kind of incidences. And I just want to share one other data point. The Hennepin County has recently released a new dashboard that pulls all of their substance misuse from their EMR data, their electronic medical records across their hospital systems. Obviously, as a neighbor, we have a lot of folks who use their health systems as well. This is the green line is last year's data from 2022 of all cannabis non-fatal overdoses that reported to the emergency room. So you can see an incredible spike, and those are All total populations, the largest increase was that 18 to 64-year-olds, but even folks who are potentially, they may be unintentionally using, but they're struggling with using appropriately, or even not intentionally using, but coming across the substance unintentionally. And those are with those what's called low potency, but still folks ending up in the emergency room. Again, I'm also happy to answer any questions, but thank you for the time.
Thank you, Sarah. Rachel?
Yeah, and I just should have added one thing. We've had some requests from both townships and cities. We was on the consent agenda today, actually, for the joint powers agreements for the county to regulate cannabis on behalf of the townships and cities, which speaks to the demand for assistance from the county. That said, I'll turn it over to Ms. Pence for a summary of the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, members of the board. Rachel Pence, Assistant Wright County Attorney. We are here requesting board approval for ordinance 23-3, which would regulate the use of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in public places. As this board is aware, effective August 1st, 2023, the Minnesota legislature approved a law decriminalizing use, possession, and home grow of cannabis in Minnesota for people 21 and older. The law outlines what a person may possess, how much they may possess, where they may possess it, and where they may use it. Consistent with the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act, cannabis use is prohibited in any public place that prohibits cigarette smoking. Cannabis use is also prohibited at public schools, state correctional facilities, and any location where smoke, aerosol, or vapor would be inhaled by a minor. Adult cannabis use is not prohibited at private residences, on private property, or at establishments or events licensed for on-site consumption. Under the new law, local governments are permitted to adopt ordinances establishing a petty misdemeanor offense for a person who unlawfully uses cannabis in a public place. Ordinance 23-3 matches state law. Specifically, it provides definitions and prohibitions consistent with the new law and serves as an enforcement mechanism for illegal use of cannabis in public places countywide. This ordinance would be a direct response to the public health concerns associated with adult use cannabis in public places pursuant to Minnesota Statute 145A.05, in that smoke, aerosol, or vapor of an intoxicating substance poses public health concerns for our communities, specifically of youth in our communities, related to unintended access and exposure to cannabis and public intoxication. Thank you, that's all I have.
Rachel, I first of all want to say thank you for aiding in all the questions that I've had leading up to today. Very good responses, very good information. Yourself and your department has done a wonderful job on getting the information out to the townships and municipalities to the best of our ability with the limited information that we have at this point as we work our way to the full implementation of the Office of Cannabis in 2025. But I want to thank you for the work you've done thus far. So at this time, we will enter.
Mr. Chair, can we ask questions now, or is that another time?
So at this time, I guess we can ask some preliminary questions that you may have from Attorney Pence, if you'd like.
I do, thank you. So, good morning, and thanks for being with us. On the way in today, I was listening, believe it or not, to an AM radio station, and somebody beat us to this ordinance across the state, and they made the news, some city. And they pointed out that there was some setbacks from businesses that, or bus shelters or different places. And I thought there was something with regular tobacco use with, you have to be so many feet away from something. Is there any consideration? I didn't see any language to it, but because you got people, especially in the winter, they're huddled up outside a bar roosting and smoking when it's cold, and you got to walk through that. So is there any setbacks that were considered for some of those places?
I mean, I think this ordinance would remove that concern because it would be prohibited to use in public, is my understanding. But I understand, Commissioner Ketchmark, what you're saying, but.
Okay, well, that would, if, as long as it's a public sidewalk outside the place, and if it's a parking lot for a business, then this wouldn't apply, would it? Unless it's a municipal parking lot?
No, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, a parking lot would be accessible to the public, and it would be prohibited underneath both definitions of a public place and a place of public accommodation.
Oh, okay.
Because to my understanding, they would only be, essentially only be able to consume it on permitted areas, which would be places that have an on-premises license, which is in existence yet, but will be eventually, and then also just private residences or private property.
And that would require local government approval to get such a license.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, thank you for all the information and bringing that forward today. And I was just hoping that we could get the PowerPoint from Public Health into the record. We didn't get it ahead of time so that it's in with the agenda packet, please.
All right. Is there any other questions of the board for the county attorney's office? If hearing none, at this time, we will open up the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to come forward and speak for the record? Oh, Attorney Kreiser?
Mr. Chair, since you're opening it for public comment, I just want to let the board know that last night I received a comment or an email from, excuse me, the city of Monticello indicating that they had no comment. So I felt I should at least get an accurate record for the board, but.
All right. Likewise, I was at the Clearwater City Council meeting, and they had no comments for the record as well. All right.
Mr. Chair, I was at Woodland Township last night, and their comment, I think they were sending it, but in case it didn't get to the record, is that they supported this ordinance, and they were gonna be following through with the joint powers agreement too, which is another sidebar, but.
Thank you. All right. At this time, we'll open up the public comment. Anyone that wishes to speak, please come forward to the podium and state your name and either city or township that you are from for the record. Please try to keep your comments to under 3 minutes if possible. Feel free to come forward at this time and address the board.
Good morning. My name is James Tyson. Welcome. What a great looking crew. It's awesome. It's my first meeting here. So I've been in the bar business for almost 35 years. I'm a resident of Monticello. I just want to say thank you for the good work. I am 100% against legalizing this drug for the state of Minnesota. I have 5 grandkids. My grandkids go to St. Michael, which is in the jurisdiction of Wright County. My other granddaughter goes to Monticello. Me being as a grandpa, I don't understand what the state's doing. So my bar's Flintstones in Clearwater, Bedrock in South Haven, and I'm heading to Cold Spring next with my next restaurant. I hope that city supports like Wright County does. I got to say, the continuing education that they just presented here, me being in the restaurant business, we do use the sheriff's office for our dram shop training. It used to be Jill, now it's somebody else. So I would ask the sheriff's department to try to add some of this training because we're going to schedule, we do it yearly. And I think insurance companies should mandate that all of your bartenders are trained through the Wright County, because I've been doing it since day one, and they do a great job. So on that note, with taking drugs into the public, one of the concerns we don't think about, my wife's girlfriend, she's in the process of building a new house, and she's in an apartment, and they smoke drugs in the apartment. So that is a public place. So I'm glad that she's in Wright County. So we have to include apartments, we have to include motels. Flintstone's hooked to a motel. I've already talked to the owner about the Clean Air Act and how we're going to, he's actually going to fine any smoke like cigarettes. It's a $250 fine if they find smoke in their motels. So we have to cover that as well. And I just want to say thank you for the great work. There are bar owners that don't want it out in front of their bars, and we will not allow it. And I wish the fine would be a little more than a petty misdemeanor, because the sheriff's department is going to have a lot of phone calls. But we'll keep it clean. And then the continuing of education throughout the years going forward, I think is going to be really important to make sure that the residents understand that Wright County is a clean air county, and we're not going to allow this to happen. So on that, that's all I have to say. And I thank you for your hard work. I've had some phone calls with some of the commissioners here on supporting this, and I get the whole medical thing, but after I served in the United States Marines fighting for people's rights, this is one right that you're not going to take away from my grandkids, is smoking drugs and whatnot. So thank you kindly.
Thank you, James. Anyone else that would like to comment for the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Steve Bott, City Administrator from St. Michael. On behalf of the city, appreciate you guys taking this up. I think being able to do things countywide, so there's consistency is really, really important on stuff like this. So with that, definitely appreciate you doing this and support it. I did have one question that had come up at the workshop when you guys discussed cannabis, and maybe it's for the county attorney's office, but it specifically for the cities talked about how we address minors with use. I don't think that's in here. I don't know if that's another ordinance we would have to take up, or whether the county attorney's office would do that to clarify that. So I guess that's.
I'll defer to Mr. Lutz.
Thank you, Mr. Bott. That's another hole in this legislation, and I think a purposeful hole, but the statute makes it clear that under 21 use is unlawful behavior, but there's no criminal penalty attached to that. There is a statutory construction tool that says when the law makes behavior unlawful but doesn't prescribe a penalty, then there's a separate statute that makes that behavior a petty misdemeanor. So we can make it a petty misdemeanor, it's just not super clear under the statutory framework. And one thing that is concerning to me is if a kid can't have a beer, why can that kid have a cart or a joint? But there is a way to get there with a petty misdemeanor. We discussed just this morning within my office with Mr. Kreiser and Ms. Pence the possibility of an ordinance, but we can't do an ordinance because the law authorizing an ordinance makes clear that we can't be in conflict with a state statute. So the state cannabis statute, which makes unlawful use by a minor at most a petty misdemeanor, would be the same penalty we could prescribe by a county ordinance. So unfortunately, it's our legal assessment that we're left with that petty misdemeanor under a separate Minnesota statute. Is that accurate, Mr. Kreiser?
County Attorney Lewis, yeah, that would be an accurate statement.
So I'm disappointed by the legislation, but we do have a petty misdemeanor option, and I discussed that with the schools at our Safe School meeting.
Do we have the latitude to create a diversion program that may be different than that of a petty misdemeanor, that may be more beneficial?
I can maybe take it, Brian, or you can. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the problem is we're dealing with a petty misdemeanor offense here. I mean, it's equivalent of a speeding ticket or a seatbelt. So someone could go through a diversion program, we could create it, but at the end of the day, they could get out of it by just paying $80 and going on with their life. So if it was a misdemeanor, we could at least do some programming, we could create a diversion program. I always refer to 152.18 colloquially as, for drug offenses, that's what we use for 5th-degree drug offenses, but creating something like that, if they would have made it a misdemeanor but mandatory diversion, we could have had more tools and more programming at our disposal. But because they made it a petty, I mean, nothing stops someone from coming into the courthouse on any given day at 8 o'clock and whipping out their checkbook for $85 and getting on with life.
What we discussed, Mr. Chair, with META, a group that I'm a member of, is we talked about the possibility of referring someone who gets a petty misdemeanor ticket for under 21 cannabis use, referring them, maybe a reduced fine or no fine, and refer them to META for a class. So we're exploring options, but Mr. Kreiser's correct. If someone wants to just pay the fine, there's not much we can do for them as far as education or classes. Again, a disappointing part of the legislation.
Is that an escalating fine? So like the first time's 80, second time, no? Or you could get like 6 minor consumption of cannabis and it'd be 80 every time?
Yeah, and because this is, you kind of have to patch together through a statutory framework to even make it a crime. I don't know that this would be something that's even on the fine schedule, because it's a statutory construction statute that we're basically creating it to be a crime.
So they would actually have to go in front of a magistrate then?
Yeah, I'll have to check into that. I don't know if it's currently not on the fine schedule. Yeah.
So, okay, interesting. So a lot more to come on terms of how that'll play out.
Yeah, and I know there's been a request to the governor's office to address this issue, and so far it's fallen on deaf ears. So.
Mr. Chair? Yes. Just like the other quick question. So you're saying that we're not going to create an ordinance for that minor piece of use, we just in practice be able to write a ticket out.
Yeah, write a ticket for a petty, which would be the same effect as an ordinance. We couldn't create an ordinance that makes it a greater penalty than what the statute allows.
Okay, thank you for clarity.
Sure.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Attorney Lutz. I just want to make sure on the city's end, we didn't have anything more to try to do to clarify that answer, which it sounds like we're good. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to comment for the record?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board. I'm Jamie Goodrum. I'm a Buffalo City resident. I also have two grandchildren in our Wright County schools, and I personally endorse this and support this ordinance. I'm also the Health and Human Services Director, and I would just like to, also make the statement that like alcohol, and then other, or, illegal drug and other illegal drugs, for child protection placements for foster care, our two largest areas of children entering foster care are both from parental neglect and from substance use. So Health and Human Services would potentially be looking at higher caseloads and things like that should the use of cannabis become, more of an issue than it is already, which, it is an issue right now with a lot of our families. And there's a cost to families and a cost to the county when that happens. So HHS supports and endorses this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Would anyone else like to comment for the record?
Terry Weezy, Buffalo Township, and we support this ordinance completely. I got one question, like for the bar owners. If they're smoking marijuana in their outside area and they get real high, they go home and have an accident, is the bar going to be responsible for any part of this?
Right now, you can't smoke, even without this ordinance, you can't smoke cannabis indoors. So inside a
but
bar, you couldn't.
In their outdoor areas where they smoke.
In their outdoor areas, right now, even with this, if this ordinance is passed, they wouldn't be able to smoke in an outdoor area. They would have to get an on-premises license. And to my understanding, I don't believe you'll be able to get an on-premises license for consumption in conjunction with that of alcohol. I could be wrong, but to my understanding is that you won't be able to have a bar that has on-premises consumption of alcohol and the on-premises consumption of marijuana combined. So,
Mr. Chair, could we just get the spelling of the name and for the gentleman to repeat his name for the minutes?
easy, W.
Terry, how do you spell your last name?
WEESE.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else like to comment for the record? Anyone else like to comment for the record?
Good morning. My name is Peggy Skeslin. I live here in Buffalo. My concern is, why is it just going to be a misdemeanor? Why isn't it going to be a felony?
So that is, a lot of it is prescribed as County Attorney Lutz said, within the state statute that really handcuffs our ability to, locally, we can't change it. We can't make the penalty harsher than that of what the state statute prescribes. So unfortunately, without the state legislator making modifications to this legislation, we couldn't impose a greater criminal penalty.
Okay, another question, just on my own curiosity. You're stating they can do it on their own private property. What if they do it on their neighbors? I just want to know.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and for your public comment response, if you're on private property, which would be a neighbor's property, this ordinance would not apply. It applies to public places and places of public accommodation. So your backyard, your neighbor's backyard are not public places of accommodation where the public generally would visit or be invited to. So you would not regulate the smoking in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that'd like to comment for the public record? Would anyone else like to comment for the public record? Would anyone else like to comment for the public record? Seeing none, at this time, I will close the public hearing and bring the discussion here forward to the Board of Commissioners for discussion. Public hearing is closed. All right, Commissioners, at this time, do you have any questions for staff or any comments based on the public comment on Ordinance Amendment 23-3 or Ordinance 23-3?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say thank you for all the hard work, and I completely agree with this going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Dietrich. Any other comments? I appreciate all the information that Public Health provided. I think that the perception of normalcy as well as the potential exposure demonstrate a good finding for a public health risk, in which case makes this ordinance very necessary and viable. For that reason, I support this ordinance, and I appreciate the staff time that they put into this and the research that has been done bringing this forward. At this time, I would entertain a motion by a board member for the approval of Ordinance 23-3, regulating the cannabis use in public spaces in Wright County.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, then we also have the summary resolution for publication as the next agenda item.
All right. This next one would be the summary resolution, so at this point, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for the publication, the summary resolution. Can I get a motion on that?
I'll
So
make
moved.
that.
All right, motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Catchmark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, resolution, Commissioner Shane?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Moving on to our 9:40 timed agenda item would be the Sheriff's Department, Captain Ferguson, requesting approval and adopt a resolution of support to apply for a grant through the Emergency Communication Network for the purchase of 4 dispatch consoles.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Looking for a resolution of support to apply for a grant, as the Chair mentioned. Also, as part of that, if we could schedule a 911 committee meeting for sometime here in the near-ish future, that would be helpful. The timeline on this, I wasn't aware that this piece was needed before we could apply for the grant. We'd be a sub-recipient of the grant, so through the region, the timeline came to light last week, so enough time to get it on the agenda for today. But I would like to have further discussion with the 911 committee to lay out what that looks like going forward and get a recommendation from that committee. The unfortunate part is the deadline for this application is, we have until the 18th to turn it over to the region. The region has to turn it over to the state by the 28th. So in order to make that timeline, we had to kind of put the cart in front of the horse.
I think that's fair enough. Your request is fair and necessary, but I'll entertain any questions from the board members. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for the grant application.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
Second.
second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Resolution, aye.
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 Resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we have Chief Treichler. I guess we have 3 agenda items. Do you want to take them in any particular order? You want to go with the Oracle first, or you want to do the U.S. Bank or Expedition Services? You tell me.
Oracle sounds great.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So about 18 months ago, with county board approval, the Sheriff's Office began working with Oracle as a design partner for the development of a new RMS system, which also include body cameras and a new squad camera. Through that process, we've been working with them pretty diligently, us along with 4 other agencies across the state, or the nation, excuse me, in this development. And we've reached the 3rd phase, or the 3rd agreement in this process, which would allow us to work in the provisioned, which would be like the testing environment of their software system, and to kind of start playing with it in that implementation process. So as part of this, next agreement, we're under no obligation to continue with Oracle if things don't go well, but it is a part of the process. In order for us to see this next part of the system, we would need to have this next agreement. Just to keep in mind that this software system also affects our law enforcement partners who are kind of along the ride, this ride with us. We would all be sharing the same system moving forward if this goes through. Part of that is, shared information. There's, several million name cards that we have in our current Zerker system. So there's a lot of data information sharing that goes on. It's very helpful to have us all be on one system together. Also, just in that sense that, increased operability. I do believe we have a representative from Oracle on the call with us today in case there's any questions you have regarding the contract that I can't answer.
And Chief, this contract here will bring us to the next phase, which will hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months bring us into the testing phase, as well as then maybe close to the live usage, correct?
Correct. So 3 of the 5 8 other agencies are already in the testing phase. They've already signed on to this agreement. There's 2, which one of them being us, are still kind of in the vetting process and getting approval. So I would say by end of this year, we'll kind of know where we sit with this project.
Questions from board members?
Mr. Chair, I just had a question. Because it's not, it's kind of experimental. Do we have a timeline that we're all of a sudden going to have to all of a sudden start paying? And are we going to get to that point?
At some point, if we decide with Oracle that we get through the design process, we like the system, we're going to move forward. Once we would do a transition phase to kind of get us prepped to use the system. And once we hit that go live date where we are on the system, our 5-year clock starts. So we have a 5-year window of zero cost to us to include the RMS system, body cameras, and all the hardware, squad cameras, including our design partner, or the other 3 agencies in the county are with us on that same agreement. So after year 5 of go live, there would be a cost associated with that afterward.
And that cost is just the annual maintenance licensing fee. They're not going to back charge us on then at that point, any new capital investments that we have to buy, we'd obviously buy them, but we're not being back charged on the previous capital expense.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chief.
Morning.
So are the other agencies in the county on board proportionately when the costs start coming in? They've already agreed and somebody's going to figure out what they would owe also?
Yeah, they would be responsible for their own costs as far as licensings for the number of officers they have, number of cameras, number of squad cameras, whatever they want within their agency, they would be responsible for those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Chief, nice to see you. What about the data? If we decide that we don't want to do Oracle anymore at some point, do we get that data that's precious to us?
Yeah, that data still belongs to us. So we would have to work with them either through on-site server storage or continued cloud access for that. But that data is still ours.
Okay. Another concern I've had from a lot of constituents is the Oracle's hiring of a past deputy, Todd Hoffman. Is going forward, I mean, there's a lot of concerns from past experience with Todd Hoffman, including like Zerker and some of the things that we've been stuck with. How many problems are we going to have going forward? How many decision-making is he doing for our county, or is it just you guys? And is there a way that we can, eliminate that piece to the Oracle? Because it seems like it's casting a shadow over the Oracle, all the hard work you guys are doing on this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is this appropriate conversation at the board?
I would say she's characterizing a question of a employee that works for Oracle. I guess her question is that person involved in our individualized contract? There's no way for me to censor that conversation for her to allow that, so.
That person's not involved in the design with us. I mean, we're in the driver's seat as far as what the sheriff's office wants, what's gonna work best for us. That individual is a customer service representative with Oracle that just kind of helps guide all the agencies through what their needs are. And ultimately, like, we're in the driver's seat of what needs we have. And so we get to control our own destiny as far as what we want. I mean, and our main point of contact has been another individual with Oracle for the most part in the last 18 months anyway.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question for Commissioner Holland. So I will say, I mean, everything you go into in business has a risk to it, but you have to look at the risk versus reward and trying to weigh this out. I support the route we're going. I mean, is there a risk in it? Absolutely, but we're benefiting to the tunes of millions of dollars. If we chose at this time to use another vendor to do this implementation, we would be on the price tag right now for $3-4 million. And at this point, and by time year 5 goes on, we will have saved probably over $5 million that we would have if we had used a other vendor into it. Now, what we're risking the fact that we are using a vendor that's new into this market, but they are a very, very high affluent vendor. They are a vendor that is the top in many other industries. They want to get into this industry. And that for that reason, I believe our risk is quite low, especially in the fact that they're saving us potentially millions of dollars. At the end of the day, worst case scenario, we'll be right where we are right now 4 years from now, but won't be out any money. So at this point, I have to say that not moving forward with this would actually be a poor decision on our part with the use of county funds and citizens' taxpayer dollars. So I appreciate the work that you're doing for this, Chief Treichler, as well as Sheriff Derringer. Thank you.
Appreciate those words.
So with that, is there any other further questions or comments? If not, I will ask for a motion to request the approval to sign the Oracle contract to continue to the next phase of RMS design and implementation.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda would be the discussion of the U.S. Bank contract. This was Mr. Lupins had responded back. There was some questions about whether the contract rate that was imposed by the board to change would be retroactive to the date. They're stating that they want to continue under their current contract, which is under $80-some an hour.
86 and change.
86 and change through this season. What I'm going to propose for a compromise to this, and I think if you asked them that said that, you know what, we will continue forward at the proposed, because they would have signed it at 95 for the rest of the season. If you want to do that and then have the discussion of the 105 at January, they may or may adopt it at that time, but then inflationary rates will kind of make that dollar amount maybe more palatable to them. That would be the compromise that I would suggest to this board, that you send back, that we can do a retroactive change of the contract at the 95 for this season and subsequent events, and then the 105 rate either can be negotiated or imposed as of January 1 of 2024.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on that. Do we know how many positions we'd be able to, at that higher rate that we're requesting, are we losing any spots that would provide overtime for our deputies?
To my knowledge, we would not be. I don't know. Captain Curtis, if you have, yeah, nothing that we're aware of.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thanks again, Chief. So I wanted to point out, because we voted to raise the rate of $105. The sheriff had proposed a $95 rate over the 87. And it sounded like in that meeting that we voted on that the MSFA was going to agree to the $95. Then I saw the update from Clay that he sent over the weekend that the MSFA wants to keep it at 87 until the end of the year, or 86 and some change. So in doing math, if you figure an 8-hour shift, and if we send 20 people at $105 versus $86.75, the difference in the real money that we wouldn't be getting is $29,200 if we would keep it at the 87. And that was the option from MSFA, is to keep it at 87 until the end of the year. We just told the cities that we're gonna start charging 105. We voted on that, and we're kind of showing then that this is kind of going back to the old way, to let someone that we have a contract determine the rate when they want it to go into effect. And I know the sheriff said he wasn't gonna fight the board on this, so that was good to hear from him. But we got another option if this isn't in agreement with the board, that we can terminate with 30-day notice. And just a reminder, this isn't the MSFA Sheriff's Office, this is the Wright County Sheriff's Office. And we voted on something here. And it seemed like there was a sense of urgency to vote on it in August. And now for some reason, the MSFA isn't interested in changing it until the end of the year. And I don't agree with that, for those reasons.
The new rate of 105 for the cities goes into effect in 2024. Currently, we are under contract or a JPA with the US Bank Stadium through this year. After the football season this year, starting on January 31st, we were in a period of time that we could renegotiate the rate. And that's what we were asking for based on input from the board. And so we had been working with them, and we had come to that 95. And so I don't believe that the US Bank Stadium is pushing back necessarily. I think that it was maybe how it was communicated, that it was that at the end of this contract that the board has made this decision to go to the 105. And so I just think that it was a communication thing. So I don't think that there was anything nefarious on their end or them dictating to us. We are currently under contract or JPA with them through this year. We're just in a period of time where we could change that, but I think that it was just how it was communicated. So I don't think that there's anything nefarious. And the 105 rate does go into effect for our cities starting January 1, 2024.
So this is kind of a situation where it's the negotiations, it's all or none unless both parties agree on the rate. So right now we said 105 and they're like, well, we will consider 105 for 2024. If you want to impose 105 now, they're basically the response back is, well, we're not sure about that. But if you want to continue at the 86 through this season, I'm proposing that we respond back, and I think the response would probably be, okay, that they would agree to amending the contract to $95 through this season. I can't say for sure, but I think that they're probably going to be more amicable because that was the discussions that you had at it. And they would be better able to incorporate a 105 cost structure if necessary, depending on their needs for next season when they set their rates for everything across their system. Palleting that increase in the short term, their rates, they're charging for everything has already been set. They can't make that change at this time. So they're saying, well, we would have to look at other options potentially if they have to implement a $105 rate immediately.
Given the fact that this last one was 18 months, would it be amicable for the board to, now that their sticker shock is there and it sounds like it's probably a go with them, to your point, if we requested a 2-year JPA and with that new rate starting January 1st with the board, would that be something that you would entertain? And then we're locked in for 2 years.
No, Mr. Chair, I'm not. I'm going to vote against this every chance I get, and I want that chance at the end of December with the new board and not get sucked into another 2-year deal. I've made my points. This is more about the money today, but there's other reasons that have been brought up. So what I would agree with, if that's the consensus, is there should be negotiation to some degree to go at the $95 till the end of the year, as Mr. Chair agreed to, and otherwise it's an end all with a 30-day notice if they don't go at that $95 for sure.
So what I would entertain is an agreement of $95 to finish out this season, and then we'll have a rate, if they agree to an increase of 105 for 2024, and it'd be whatever, that's 15-month contract. And then we'll renegotiate a rate for 2025 at that time. Is that a fair? Sheriff, are you okay with that? I think that's what I think I have a consensus up here. 95 through the rest of the season, 105 will go for 2024, and then we'll relook at it after that.
Yeah, and I just think it needs to be communicated through admin.
Yep.
We're out.
You're out.
We're just
Okay,
a
I think this is
we're the
really close to
facilitator
where.
for the service, but I think it needs to be communicated through admin.
Absolutely, and that's just fine. I think we're closer to where the expectations were on it, because before we were setting 95 potentially for 18 months. This is just a little bit different, but we're trying to work with them, and I think we're close to where we need to be. So
That's fine.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, we're still going to take this up at the end of December when the current contract ends.
Would we be posturing them as signing a 15-month contract from basically from September 1st or whatever, or August 25th through December 31st of 2024, and the contract would read that we'd have a rate of $95 from today's date through December 31st of this year, and then as of January 1 of next year and all of 2024 would be a $105 rate. That's what the contract would read.
Or to Commissioner Ketchmark's point, we are under the current JPA. We are within the window of renegotiating the rate. We could simply ask for a continuation of this JPA with our new rate to run through this year. And then with that in mind, we could ask them to his point, enter another JPA starting next year.
If they want to renegotiate it and look at it as a different if you want to, we can do just keep 95 through this year and renegotiate it in December. Or,
That's fair.
Either
I
one.
don't think it's appropriate here to go beyond this contract. I was led to believe that we were settling a new rate until the end of this year, until this correspondence came out, because there was an urgency to get this done in August. And so we did that.
So
The urgency was on your part, I would just remind you.
fair enough. So the question then, I guess, is you have two options here. We can either create a whole new agreement that goes for this year and all of next year, or we can take one just for the next 6 months, and we can have a discussion about this sometime in the upcoming months about what 2024 looks like. There's also the option if we want to look at a totally different contract. They did posture that if you wanted to have a different, from a supervisory rate versus a standard deputy rate, in dividing that out, we could do that as well. But I think at this point, from logistics, and it's easier just to go with a flat rate, but
Mr. Chair.
yes.
I think what we had aimed for is that 105, and if they've already agreed for next year, that would be that amount. The negotiation is just for this few months, whether it's 95 or 105. So I would feel that bringing forward a 105 contract for next year should be tied in with this. I think that's what we have done with the cities. It's at 105. If they've agreed for next year, it would be 105. Then we just move forward with that as well.
So,
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm looking for just the next 6 months at this point.
okay,
Me as well. I think there's some other things I'd like to look at that contract and discuss. So I would say let's just do the 6 months and then renegotiate for 2024.
so what I'm going to be looking for is a motion to set the articulated letter back that we would enter into a contract for the remaining part of the season at the rate of $95 through this point, and then we can renegotiate a contract sometime in the October, November for the 2024.
I'll make that motion, as you
second that.
well stated.
All right, motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, are we looking to potentially cancel the contract then if they do not agree with that $95? Because we're currently in a contract with them. So we're motioning to amend the existing contract to $95 and send that to them, or are we giving them notice that if they don't accept that, we will cancel it?
That would be the intent of it, I guess, because
I'll amend the
We
motion
already
to
have a
include that.
contract in place. I mean, why would we cancel a contract that we already have in place?
Because there is a cancellation clause that if we have reasons to modify our rate, that we can mutually or exclusively, with 30 days' notice, leave the contract if they are unwilling to meet the rates that we need or we're requesting. So because our rates, our cost has changed significantly in the last 9 months. Hence the reason we're articulating that we have to exercise this clause, and hence the reason we're asking them to make an increase of $7-8 to their rate to basically make ourselves whole to the cost that we are actually incurring on this. So
I'm not opposed for asking more money for this, for our deputies, because I do feel they're really valuable, honestly. It feels like this is a struggle going on between us and the sheriff's department, that there's other questions that aren't being articulated, and let's stick to the contract. We have a contract in place. We can negotiate it. We already did and came back. I would prefer if that would come back to the board if it wasn't agreed upon. We already have something in place. I don't want to see the 30-day clause and the contract if they don't agree.
So you're saying, basically then you're saying you want to finish it out at the subsidized rate, in my opinion, at 86 and some change for the rest of the
If we
season.
can bring it forward to them for the 95, but if not, I would continue through this year and do the negotiations that you all have expressed in this November, December.
Mr. Chair, was there a motion on the table?
Yes.
We didn't have a second on it, so we had to actually hold up. Thank you for call of order. Thank you. Did we have a second on it? We did have a second, yes. We're in discussion.
This is
Yep.
discussion.
Yep, this is discussion. You're right. By Commissioner Holland. So the only, if you're sending a negotiation and that you're not willing to walk away on, that's not really a negotiation. I feel at this point you're telling me, well, $95, but if you don't take it, we'll keep doing it. I don't think there's
We're in
gonna be.
a contract already. It's
Mr.
not,
Chair.
we're not starting over.
Well, the contract does allow us to be able to give them a 30-day notice if we need to change rates and they don't agree to it. We can either leave that contract or,
I understand,
yeah.
Mr.
but we
Chair,
still have a choice.
I'll amend my motion to include we're out with a 30-day notice if they don't agree to $95 till the end of the year.
Thank you for the clarification. And
I'll second that.
that's the agreed upon by the seconder. So we have a motion to make communications to the US Bank Stadium for the contracted rate with the notice that the rate for the rest of this of 2023 would go to $95 with the county's board's appetite to exercise the 30-day exit clause if they are not in agreement with the $95 rate. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. All right. The next item on there would be the expedition services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. So we've talked, and there's been correspondence back and forth, and the three members of the board weren't here when it started, but in a previous budget season, we had talked about expedition services. The board was told that it was a retired FBI agent that was teaching firearms at the training center. And when I review the claims, we see the fees for that service are just under $7,000. And now they went up to about $7,100. And I see next year's pro service budget is gonna go up $20,000, and there was an explanation for hiring costs and miscellaneous expenses, which would, if you split the $20,000, it looks like potentially a pay raise for expedition services. There wasn't anything else detailed there, but my point was that we haven't seen a contract or any, through administration, they haven't been able to find one. We've asked for one. We were looking for a certificate of insurance for this service, and it just doesn't seem like a good business practice to have a service like that contracted for 70, 80,000 a year without something that we have for an expectation and what we're getting for the money. So do you have anything like that for the service at this time?
We have an agreement that him and I have talked about. It's
Okay.
not, it's nothing in writing.
Well, thank you for being honest and forthcoming. I did my best outside of the meeting to ask for it and didn't get it. And I
You
just,
have yet to call me or
Well-
email me or text message me.
we talked at the appropriate budget meeting about this, and your chief couldn't produce it. I talked to Shauna on the phone before the budget meeting. She said, I'm wondering if you have any questions. I said, we still haven't seen the contract for this service. I guess I'm running this past the board because I don't know if this is common around Wright County for these types of agreements, but I would like to see, with consensus of the board here, but some type of contract. I just, with all the elected official experience we have up here, I'm looking for feedback now that the details have been laid out.
To my understanding, I believe that you are working on getting something in that going forward. So I'm not sure to the point that we have to take any action, because I believe we have a resolution coming forward to this situation that doesn't it doesn't need board approval for this contract because it is a professional service. It is within his purview to sign it. I do believe that he, to your point, Mike, in wanting to have an articulation or a written contract, which is best practices, not necessary, but also best practices. I believe that the sheriff intends to work with you to meet your desires as well. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
What's the clarification?
That the request by Commissioner Catchmark to have going forward some sort of a written agreement on this this professional service.
So is
going forward.
Is that county staff time to put that together?
I don't know. I guess.
Well,
Clay, I guess.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we can certainly put an agreement together for this service. I think it could be pretty straightforward and simple. Currently, in our policies, there are no requirements for such contracts to be written, and that's something we will probably bring forward as administration as a consideration going forward of what threshold do we need these contracts to be written, but currently there is nothing stating that an agreement like this does need to be written. That said, if we do want a written agreement of this, which would probably be considered a best practice, that's certainly something we can work on.
I think something that's on a regular billings, and especially something in this amount, I mean, I think it's a fair, reasonable ask. And I think you probably agree that it's not that much work, and we can probably do it on our end to drawing it up, and the other individual can agree or disagree to it or make modifications.
Absolutely. I can work with them as far as the parameters that we've already agreed to through emails and handshakes, absolutely. So the service doesn't necessarily change, but if we all feel better that something is written down, I'm fine with that.
All right. I think that would be a good resolution to this discussion, because then at least gives you, Commissioner Catchmark, the clarity that you want, that there's parameters to it. And then also to finances, it makes it a little bit better from them to be able to approve or disapprove of expenditures based on having a scope of what the services are.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
And I would like to say too, I would hope that we would know if there's, if we can talk to Tim Dahl and make sure that, as far as any liability concerns, that would be covered as well.
And Mr. Chair, and I would hope, and you referenced me, but I would hope this isn't the Mike Ketchmark contract. This should be more of a standard and a concern, I would think, with the rest of the board.
That's what Clay said, that they'll be working on a policy moving forward as a whole for the county.
And yes, you're right. I guess, but just your question, but I agree. I mean, we want to have best practices as well as the sheriff wants to participate in best practices, and hence the reason we need to maybe make some clarity within our fiscal policies. And then also, in addition, just cleaning up some of those ones that are existing and getting them in writing so that those previous agreements are then compliant with future potential fiscal policies.
So I would like to see that contract. I think the board should see it, since this is a service that's been going on for, is it 2 years?
1 year.
Oh.
Started the week after July 4th last year.
Okay. 2 points that I would like to run past that I think should be in the contract would be more of a accountability piece, like a charge per hour or a per deputy, rather than just a flat rate regardless of what's going on or how often he's out there. I would feel more comfortable with that on the accountability side, because there is various activities and training out there, but we're paying this service for firearms. And I know there's sign-ins and you have a body count, and so I would like that considered rather than the flat rate.
It's actually, it's a flat rate, but it's not a flat rate. What he did is he took 2,080 hours minus 3 weeks of vacation. He charges us $45 an hour. It's a bargain to have him out there. And so that's the rate. This next year, he's got a child out of state that moved out of state. And so he and his wife are to the point he's contemplating maybe taking the month of January off. The beautiful part about it is if he takes time off, it's reflective. We don't pay him unless he's here. We only pay him for the hours. And we actually get way more than what he's invoicing us for, depending on the needs of the sheriff's office. It's actually been remarkable what he's done and the expertise that he brings to our office. And I just might add that never before have we had the scrutiny surrounding our training that we do today. He has been a blessing to the sheriff's office in the skill set that he brings.
And thank you for that, Sheriff. I think we all should have probably had that explanation, you know, rather than just Expedition Services, just kind of a mystery. I mean, if you and I talk, I can't run down the hall and tell everybody what this person is doing. We can't do that. But I think in fairness, it's good to hear. I'm not, arguing about that the training is good. It would be good because a lot of public asks what's going on out there. And when I say, well, there's a retired FBI person for this amount of money that's teaching firearms. Well, don't they have their own firearms instructors? So we got to walk through that with the constituents. And so I wanted to have the group discussion, but I tried to get it in another way where it could have been shared in an email, but that didn't work out. So we tried it. But I'm glad you're willing to work with us and get us some more detail.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the items? I appreciate your time and clarity to the board on this matter. Thank you very much, Sheriff, Chief. We're good. All right. Now moving on to the 948, which is now the 1031, is the Matt Detchen review petition for partial abandonment of County Ditch 31 and schedule a public hearing under statute 103E.806.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So we have received a petition under Minnesota Statute 103E.806 for partial abandonment of lateral number 2 of County Ditch number 31. When we receive that petition, we are required to schedule a public hearing within 30 days. Staff has provided you with a earliest date of September 12th to hold this public hearing with notice requirements and mailed notices being sent to landowners. Other than that, it's just scheduling when the date and time of that public hearing.
So we don't have a county board meeting on the 12th, so it would be the 19th then? I guess we'd be setting it at 9:30 on September 19th?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, sorry.
As I referenced at the last meeting, I was going to bring up an evening meeting. Talked to a guy last night that's directly affected by this, and I said, hey, can you make it by 6 p.m.? Can we do that? He said, yes. Not that this hinges on one person, but it kind of gets old hearing from all these constituents is I can't make it at 9, and they don't want to take a day of vacation for a 1-hour ditch meeting, which I can't blame them. At the other Ditch 31 meeting, we had 8 to 10 people there. I know all of them but 2 were retired and 70s, 80s, 80 years old. So just consideration, I would like to have it a 6 p.m. meeting, potentially the 19th. There's another day that we have another meeting that we're coming in for.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm in with the Transportation Alliance on the 19th. Not sure if we can do it without me.
I guess it's challenging because this sets a very different precedence. As much as I'd love to be able to meet people whenever and however, it does challenge us because if you start trying to accommodate schedules for every different petitioned item, we could, I mean, I guess, you know.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I think if you have constituents who have difficulty getting here, we can always have them join via Teams and send them a remote link, if that's what they would like to do.
Mr. Chair, if a person's riding a road grader, doing road work, they cannot get on by Zoom. So I can make the motion for an evening meeting and lose it 4-1, but I can tell my constituents that I tried, as I have in the past. Otherwise, it's kind of like going through the motions at 9 a.m. with a virtually empty room. If we have an empty room in a couple evening meetings, I can report that back and say, we tried it and it didn't work. But, Matt, what is there, about 40 people that are gonna be noticed on this meeting in particular?
Be more like 60.
60 people. Okay, so it's not just 10, there's a number there.
What's the date we're looking at?
September 19th.
Well, that's the soonest, right? We can,
Yeah, September 12th is the soonest because we have 3 weeks of publication in the local newspaper for a public hearing. I do, just for logistics and planning purposes, how we standardly do it is I run the meeting, someone's taking minutes, and then we would need to have likely legal review at a public hearing such as this. So that coordination with other staff that would have to be involved. If it's after hours, we should potentially
Mr. Chair,
bring that
members
back.
of the- Yeah, sorry, Matt, for interrupting you, but Mr. Chair, members of the board, I will not be able to make an evening ditch meeting. It just will not work with my schedule.
Mr. Chair, then I'd ask County Attorney Lutz, is there any staff that you can line up that could be available for an evening meeting for our constituents? That's kind of off that if we have a staff that completely rules out an evening meeting, so I'll defer to the chief here.
Yeah, you know, if this is a decision the board makes, we'll accommodate the request. You know, Mr. Marty is the Assistant Civil Division Chief. Certainly won't have the expertise that Mr. Kreiser has, so I think the board would greatly benefit from Mr. Kreiser's expertise, but we'll accommodate it if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
I guess, I mean, I could compromise with a, and I think we could probably get Attorney Kreiser if you want to do like a 4:30. I do know that I get, Tuesdays are a very challenging evening with a lot of the city councils, township things that I have on those evenings. So I would say I would avoid a Tuesday evening. I would probably go for a Wednesday evening if we were going to do it. I'd ideally would, to save us from having staff basically toiling for a couple hours, if you go to a 4:30, or 5 o'clock start time versus a 6 o'clock start time, because then they can just continue their workday and just stay a little bit longer and flex that time. Whereas if you go with a 6 o'clock time, they are not going to go home for an hour and a half. They're going to basically kind of try to find something to do here within the building, and just you're increasing that amount of time they need to flex.
Okay, Mr. Chair, you guilted me into agreeing to 5. But you want a Wednesday like the 27th, or?
You want to go?
No, we got a mayor's
So you're
meeting
going
the
pretty far
20th.
out. Then you want to go that far? I mean,
Well, we got a mayor's meeting the 20th if you're looking at a
oh
Wednesday.
yeah, actually, yeah, you're right.
There's a Thursday, the 21st at 5, or?
So whichever you think. So we're going.
Can we do the 13th? Wednesday the 13th?
You want to go Wednesday the 13th? I can do Wednesday the 13th. You want to do
13th?
Wednesday the 13th at 5 o'clock?
That's an MRC meeting in Alexandria until 5 o'clock.
Oh, that's right. That's the conference day.
Thursday, the 14th?
Thursday the 14th. Thursday. I can't do that. Tuesday. Ideally, so
Monday?
we
the
could do the
18th?
wait. Well, this item is going to be, so the 20th, they have Mayor's Association, and that one's in, is it Otsego? You could still make it, because that starts at 6:30, so this will probably be, if you started at 5 o'clock, you'll be able to get in and out of there before that would be.
Okay.
So if we do the 20th at,
We can get 4 of us. You're not available?
Yep, not
yeah,
available.
which we can get 4 of us here.
Are 4 interested in 5?
20th.
20th.
20th. We have the mayor's meeting.
Yeah, but that's at 6:30. That starts at 6:30, so we can get 5. I don't know. You have a better idea, but do you feel that the public comment, is there going to be all 60 individuals probably commenting on this abandonment? Historically, in abandonment, we're usually top 5 comments from it. We don't have an engineer's presentation on it, so largely all we're doing is taking public comment based on the petition. So I expect this item should be less than that of an hour.
I hope, Mr. Chair. I mean, some people look at it like we've abandoned all the ditches for 100 years.
Yeah.
But unless staff's got other things that they think are coming that we don't know about, but Attorney Lutz can line somebody up for that day then?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Ketchmark, we will accommodate our schedules accordingly as best we need to. For these items, traditionally, there really isn't a need for legal support there because we generally just have the petitioner showing up to present this. And pretty much no one else shows up from the public on these matters traditionally. So
This is
for an
something that-
abandonment, these are just mainly formalities that we have to go through. And
You could zoom in available to ask any questions
I
that we
could.
maybe have.
Yes.
Because from like 5 to 5:30, you could just zoom in for us to ask questions. That way we don't have to have Mr. Lutz find an attorney to be in the room.
yeah, and Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, I'm at the point in my life personally where I have kids that I am busy every single night, and I am booked out 6 months in advance with their schedules, with swimming and everything else. Between life goes on when you have young kids under 10. So I have my planning meetings that I book out a year in advance. So to add these less than that is very difficult. But we will accommodate as best we can.
Okay. Then I'd make a motion to set that meeting for 5 o'clock on September 20th.
All right. So we have a motion to set the public hearing for the abandonment of lateral 2 on County Ditch 31 for September 20th at 5 p.m. here in the county boardroom.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, my second item, and I do have Darren Nelson from MnDOT on, I believe he's still on Teams, to review MnDOT's request to make an in-kind, or make multiple in-kind culvert replacements along I-94 on County Ditch number 33, located in Monticello. There is a statute that spurs a formal public hearing process if the replacement of these culverts are not in-kind. Staff, along with Houston Engineering, has verified the plan submitted by MnDOT, and they are all considered in-kind replacements. So that does not spur the requirement for MnDOT to make a petition to the board and a public hearing be held under Minnesota statute 161.28. So this is just, so your guys' awareness of the project that MnDOT's proposing. Obviously, we get quite a few questions about the culverts along I-94 with the County Ditch number 33 repair process. So this is somewhat of a formality, and Darren can speak to that a little bit more, to ensure that the work that they're doing won't impair drainage for this ditch system.
So there's a number of questions by the benefited landowners on Ditch 33. One, they wanted to make sure that they were not going to incur the cost with the work on 94 in terms of the replacement of those culverts, so hence the in-kind replacement of them. The second part of it was wanting to make sure that they weren't going to alter any of the elevations of those culverts, and a lot of this here is to bring clarity to that.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Matt for knowing the rules and regulations in the state statute and making that work with MnDOT.
Yep, they've been, sorry, I just want to speak to MnDOT's been really great to work with on this project. There's proposed realignment that we're looking that goes across MnDOT property, and they're willing to work with us on that as well. So it's been a good experience.
And which is great to hear, because I think that was a lot of the concerns that historically, that sometimes those conversations can be challenging, and we're finding out that in this case that is not the situation, and hopefully that continues forward. So appreciate all your work on that, Matt. So with that, I will look for a motion on the request to make an in-kind replacement along I-94 for County Ditch 33.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. All right, the next item on the agenda was the approval, the findings and orders directing a repair to County Ditch 31 under State Statute 103E.715. This would be what we came back from the public hearing about, is that a month ago?
July 25th.
July 25th, yeah, about just shy of a month ago. So looking to take formal action on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, staff, pursuant to your direction after the last hearing on County Ditch 31 drafted the proposed resolution, taking into consideration all the documents and items in the record and the comments received from the public. I believe we articulated correctly what the board wanted as far as direction here, which is that we would proceed with the Phase 2 repairs between stations 106 plus 75 to 186 plus 96. Nothing would be happening upstream of the culvert under Fillmore Avenue. Unfortunately, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources doesn't want to proceed with the best management water practices control issue that the engineer thought would benefit the lake. So with the DNR's objection, we removed that best practice management tool that we had looked at doing. Other than that, I think everything is in order, and we are awarding it under subpart D at the end of the resolution, awarding the contract to Asheville Companies, who was the lowest base bidder, in the amount of $102,242.67, and no alternate bids are being accepted.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And Matt and I have talked about this at length, and of course, we had the past meeting. So something came up from a citizen that talked to your weed czar that sprays along the ditch, that the slopes could have been better, easier to manage on Phase 1. So can you talk with your staff person and see if any adjustments have to be made in Phase 2 on like the buffer and navigating that with the sprayer?
Okay. Like if he's able to access it?
Yeah, well, driving and that the slopes weren't the best for the sprayer maybe to navigate and spray properly.
Yeah, he's already sprayed the ditch. I've been out there with him and we were able to traverse it with the four-wheeled vehicle, which is what our specs require, that it's drivable with a four-wheeled vehicle. So I guess that he is able to do that and complete his spraying activities.
Yeah, I'm just relaying what a citizen said that was talking to him. So we got to bring that up here so that if there's something to change, we can change it in Phase 2. But otherwise, I think it's still the best to go from Fillmore to 8 with a nice cut start and end point, and what the DNR does is another decision and matter if they follow through with that. So I would make a motion to approve the findings and order directing the repair of Wright County Ditch 31.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark, second by Commissioner Shane for the findings and order directing to repair Wright County Ditch 31 to Asheville Companies with under option D. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just real quick, the abandonment of 31, the lateral, that wouldn't have any effect on this resolution?
Yeah, I did put that in there that we would notify the contractor to hold off on work on lateral 2 until that public hearing is satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Now we have Mr. Reinberger, who's been waiting very patiently here to one of the end of the agenda items here to approve and adopt a resolution requiring property divisions within zoning authority of Wright County be approved by the Planning and Zoning Department prior to recording and transferring of documents.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Currently, our subdivision ordinance 154 requires approval of all divisions. However, recording statutes are set up that if a document is sufficient to record, they're required to record it. Statute 272 allows the county to adopt a resolution requiring planning and zoning approval within our jurisdiction prior to that document being recorded. So this gives the recorder's office the ability and actually the right to deny a deed if it's a transfer document that results in a division prior to them actually recording it. So this has been talked about for a number of years. We actually have the stamps. The stamps were ordered before I took over. It's just we never got to the point of actually getting the resolution adopted, and so that's what we're looking at here. We have approval from legal. I've talked at length with the recorder, and they're in favor of this resolution, so we're here today looking to get it adopted.
This is nice to see us clean up this process and get it more uniform to the way it should be so that there's not some missing communication between planning and zoning and that of the recorder's office. So.
We spend a fair amount of staff time trying to fix these after they're already recorded. This will allow us to have those fixes up front. When we do encounter those, it often comes with that cost of staff time for us, and it also costs the property owners money because they have to re-record documents, they may have to redo surveys. In this case now, we can handle all that up front before it gets to that where they're now, going through the process, or in some cases, they have to hire attorneys because it's part of a purchase, and now things are incorrect there, and it gets title companies involved, and it's a fairly ugly process once we have to deal with it. We have staff that track all the divisions that take place within the county, because we have to do stuff in our system to move permits when there are divisions, and so we find out about them, but they are fairly troublesome to work with in a lot of instances.
Thank you, Barry. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve and adopting the resolution requiring property divisions within the zoning authority of Wright County to be approved by planning and zoning prior to recording.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Shane, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, resolution, Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
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 Aye. Resolution passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you. All right, we are now moving down to advisory committee updates. Is there anyone that wants to start off? Otherwise, Administrator Clay, you have anything?
No, I don't.
No? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, the county fair met after the fair, successful fair, good attendance, revenue was up. They appreciated the commissioners that came down there and spent some time with them. We had the All Safe Schools meeting, and we had a meeting or two and a lot of correspondence on something called Smokegate in Franklin Township. That's a sidebar meeting that we're working to resolve, hopefully. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've had a lot of things going on in my communities with St. Michael Days and Nights. We've had Rockford River Days, participated in and went to both of them. Also, Hanover had their festivities a week ago. We also have the Crow River BMX, the Nationals down in St. Michael, which is a very, very large event. So there'll be a lot of extra people in the area, and I'm sure they'll be utilizing a lot of the areas as well.
All right. At this time, I'm going to defer my advisory stuff to a later date, but
Yes, thanks, Chair. Last week, I was too at St. Michael Days and Nights, and the week before that, I was at the Duluth for the Central Minnesota Jobs and Training. A lot of good information. We did have a representative come from Washington to relay some information on impending maybe shutdowns that would affect the JTMS. So just kind of watching for that, but otherwise, it was a really good, informative weekend.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing.
pardon me?
Nothing.
You're good? All right. Is there any other business that needs to come before the county board at this time? Hearing none, we will adjourn the county board meeting at 10:53.